So I am very happy to be back here again. Today we're going to talk about personal branding and the things that you can do to build your brand. I'm going to give you lots of do's. The only 2 don'ts will be towards the end of the session. I only have 2, okay? So before we move into the presentation or our session, our discussion, I want to ask you all to think about a brand that you love and that you're loyal to, that you feel a connection to. Does everybody have that brand? Okay. Usually it doesn't take that long when you have that love for a brand. Okay. Now I want you to think about all the reasons why you love that brand. Is it their unique value that they provide to you? Is it that positive experience you get from them interacting, whether it's online or in their physical location, if they have one? Or maybe it's their brand tone. Maybe they're super snarky, or maybe they're really compassionate or empathetic. So the reason I'm asking you to do this quick little exercise is because I want to make the point that how we make decisions about consumer brands is very similar to how we make decisions about people and the feelings we have towards them, right? So each of us, whether you realize it or not, is a brand. And it's our responsibility to define what that brand is so others don't do it for us, right? We don't want someone to describe who we are or what we do if they don't even know us, right? So we have to put out our brand boldly. And so what I'm going to be talking about is all these fun things that you can do to really tap into who you are, right? And by building your personal brand, you're showcasing all of your unique qualities, your values, and your strengths to the world. And you're also demonstrating a consistent image of yourself to others to garner respect and trust, right? Because those brands that you love, you trust them, right? To a certain extent, right? You trust that the experience with them will be consistent. So it's the same with your brand. You want someone to engage with you, and that is a consistent experience. Now, in a world that we live in, which is filled with uncertainty and change, resilient, which are the only constants, right now, resilience becomes an important part of building your personal brand, right? And so resilience really is being able to bounce back from setbacks, accept challenges, right? And staying motivated in the face of adversity. So having a strong sense of self and understanding your brand, it helps you to become more resilient, especially in today's climate. So what is a personal brand, so that we're all on the same page? A personal brand is how you present and package your unique promise of value. It's unique because it sets you apart from others that could share your same title. It's a promise because you promise to deliver it in everything you do and say. And it's a value to your target audience, whomever that audience is. Let's say, for the sake of this conversation, it's an HR recruiter or manager, okay? Okay, I know, that reminded me to check my phone. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the do's, and I'm going to present it in the context of how you can evaluate your brand, the things that you can eliminate, things that no longer serve your brand, and then how can you elevate your brand to your audience, whomever that audience is. And then we'll talk about the 2 don'ts. So evaluating your personal brand is an ongoing process, but it's a process. It's a process of self-reflection, feedback from others, okay? If you listened, how many of you went to the panel discussion? It was an awesome panel, right? They talked a lot about feedback. You can't build your brand in a vacuum. You have to understand how others perceive you. So feedback is really going to be important. So how can you evaluate your brand? What are the things that go into that? There's a lot of self-analysis. And so when I take my clients through this, it's a longer process. It takes a while, okay? But to uncover your brand isn't a quick process. You really want to understand who you are at your core. Because when you understand who you are at your core and what's important to you and what's not important, it makes your decision-making much easier. It helps you to make decisions about employers easier. So I take my clients through what I call the VPs. So this is vision, values, passion, and purpose. And then we talk about strengths, and we go into goals. So vision is external. It's what you see possible for the world. And purpose is how you could potentially make that vision come true. Your help in that. And passion and values are your operating principles. So these are your operating principles. These are your deal breakers. If you start interviewing at a company and things just don't feel right to you, they're not aligned with you, right? You'll feel it. Something isn't right. They're crossing that belief system, the operating principles. And then passions. These are activities that energize you. Okay? And so even if, and I know in the panel discussion they talked about passions and that, all that stuff. I am of the school that you should talk about your passions, particularly to HR managers, because when you talk about your passions, you become energized and interesting to that HR manager. Even if it's not specifically related to the job at hand, they want to get to know all of you, right? And again, finding that connective tissue is important, but make sure you highlight your passions. And your strengths, of course, you want to understand what are those differentiating strengths? What can you say no one else has? Okay? And then goals. Oh, and also with purpose and passion, resilience is fueled by purpose and passion. So when you begin to align them with your brand, you gain clarity, a sense of clarity, which enables you to stay motivated in the face of any adversity. So it's important throughout your career to understand that, because you are going to have ups and downs. We've all had it. We've all gone through them. So goals, it's really important to understand what your professional goals are, and personal, but write down what you want to accomplish. What are your goals in the next 2 to 3 years? And make them visible. And there's a part of our brain that helps us to accomplish our goals, and it's called RAS, R-A-S, Reticular Activating System. It essentially acts as the traffic cop for information that gets into our conscious minds. And what gets into our conscious minds is this tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. We get bombarded with 700 billion stimuli a day, right? And again, there's a tiny, tiny fraction that makes it into our conscious mind. What makes it in are those things are self-serving. So the simple act of writing down your goals and having them visible on your desk or your laptop resets your RAS to say, hey, that's important to me, so be on the lookout for anything that will help me achieve that goal. So in reality, I'll give you a simple explanation of how it works. Say you're in the market to buy a new laptop, and you start doing research on that laptop. And you start to hone in on one that you think you really like and that you're going to buy. And then suddenly, everyone around you has that same laptop. Most likely, they've had it for a while. You just never noticed, because now your brain you've reset the RAS, to say that's important to me. So I do this all the time. I have my top 3 personal and professional goals. I don't have any more than that. I can't function with more than that, right? So you want to do one, do one. If it's to get a job in the next 6 months, write that down. When I had my first start, after I graduated, I was living on Long Island. I wanted to move into the city and find a job in the city. And I wrote it down. I had it visible every day. Well, it was actually in my journal. And so I write my journal every day, still do. And would you know, I went back like a year later, and I was looking at my journal, and it was there. I accomplished it. I think it was in 5 months or something, because I was working another job that I was miserable. And so it was 5 months. So it works. You have to reset that RAS. Really important part. And so once you go through the VPs and your strengths and your passions, all of that, and your goals, you want to take a look at what your online presence is saying about you, okay? 90%, I'm not going to go through all these statistics, but 90% of hiring managers are using social media to screen, okay? So it's important for you to understand what they're seeing. And you have to understand, does this support or reinforce how I want to position myself to an employer? So there's a term called digital first, and this means that we now more often form first impressions of people before we meet them online. Okay? And first impressions are formed within 7 seconds. It's actually less now, less than 7 seconds. So if someone Googles you, a hiring manager Googles you, and results come up, they are going to form an impression of you within 7 seconds, whether it's good or bad. The goal is to make sure it's a favorable first impression, right? So this is why I urge all of you to really do this, and I'm going to show you how you can do it. I do this with my clients all the time that have been working for 3 or 4 years, and they're always surprised at what comes up when I do the search. Now, first impressions, and this is why I said earlier, it's important for us to define our own brand so no one does it for us, right? We don't want somebody to Google us, see who we are online, and then they misinterpret our brand, right? So to explain why first impressions are so important, there are 2 concepts. One is primacy. It's called the primacy effect, which means it's the tendency to remember the first piece of data that we encounter better than any information that's presented later on. So let's say, for example, I decide I have to go to Duane Reade, which I'm always writing lists. I leave my apartment, and I forget the list at home. I always remember the number 1 thing on that list, the very first thing I wrote down. The second concept is called anchoring. So this is when we encounter that first piece of data, it gets stored in our long-term memory. It gets anchored there. So say I'm a hiring manager and Mary Smith's resume comes across my desk. I research her online, and for some reason, whatever it is, I form a negative first impression of her. The interesting thing about anchoring is, if I meet Mary Smith and I think she's fantastic, I still hold on to that original belief. And that's why first impressions are so important. Now, as I get to know her over time, right, I could recognize that I made a mistake and that's not who she is. But often we don't have that time, right? So there are so many things that we can do to control our brand and control what's out there. So what can you do? Really simple action item. Set your browser to incognito mode or private mode. Log out of your accounts, your Google accounts. You want to get the purest results possible. You don't want anything skewed. By doing this, you actually are going to see what a hiring manager sees, okay? Write your name down in quotation marks so you get accurate results. If you want to put a descriptor down, So for example, I could put Jacqueline Piros, New York City, or Jacqueline Piros, personal brand strategist, whatever it is, in quotation marks. And then I'll see actually what comes up that's relevant to me. Go through the first 5 pages. Not that any hiring manager is going to go through the first 5 pages, but this is a baseline for you. So you're going to take a look at all of the images, videos, any podcasts or audios that you have that you've been featured on, any reviews that come up on Amazon, anything that represents your digital footprint. It's large. It's a big digital footprint. So take stock of all that. And then, so you're going to analyze and take action, meaning, do you need to clean anything up? Do you need to delete anything? How many of you have created your LinkedIn profile? Awesome. So it's ready to go, right? Because that is the first result that will come up after sponsored. And that's where hiring managers go. So make sure you have a professional headshot, your tagline or your contact information is visible, okay? Leverage. And I'm going to show you at the end of this presentation a couple of things that you can do to really amp up your LinkedIn profile and how it looks visually. And then create synergy across social media. What I mean by that is if you want to be known for something, make sure it is written across all of your social media platforms, okay? So people start to associate that with you. And create branded and relevant content. That means if you want to position yourself as a filmmaker or an influencer or a production assistant, when you're doing this analysis, does the content speak to that? And if you think it's missing some of that, now you have the time to do it, right? Before you start positioning yourself for interviewing. How many have graduated already? Okay. So everyone's in the interviewing phase here? Yes? Is it going well? Good. I mean, just the fact that you're all here and you're taking advantage of this amazing event, you're going to go far. Okay? You showed up. Just also, before you post anything, just think, would my mom appreciate this, right? That could be your little test. Again, 7 seconds, someone forms an impression of you. You don't have the opportunity to correct it, okay? And promote yourself. It is not bragging if it's based on facts. So make sure you're highlighting your accomplishments wherever you can. Talk about them. Make sure they're high up on your LinkedIn profile. Think about all of your accomplishments, small and large, and start writing a story around them so that you're able to speak to that, right? People love storytelling. So when you go on an interview, tell that story of how you accomplished something. And don't worry if you think it's too small. We always minimize our accomplishments, okay? So it's not bragging if it's based on facts. Okay, so you know how you eliminate, you kind of go through, how many have gone through their seasonal wardrobe and cleaned out their closet recently, now that the spring is coming? Okay, so you declutter your closet, you reorganize your desk, all of that. And what does that give you? It gives you clarity. You look in your closet and you're like, oh, thank God, I can finally see what I really have in my closet because I got rid of I eliminated all this stuff. You want to do this with your personal brand. So you'll say, Jackie, well, how can I do that? Here are a couple of things that you can do. You want to eliminate anything that will hinder your ability to get inside an organization for an interview, right? So any questionable images or videos, okay, remove them. Any associations or activities that no longer serve your brand. Don't forget, you've gone through the VPs. You understand your goals. You have clarity on where you want to take yourself for the next couple of years. So it's okay to disassociate with or not participate in certain associations anymore, right? You want to channel that extra time into those associations or people that will help you achieve those goals now. Same thing with network connections. Now, I know you're all starting out, so I'm not advising to remove your connections, but over the years, what I do is I go through. I did not have a linear path in my career. So there are things that I no longer do and I will never do again. So there are connections that I don't really need. So I will remove those connections from my LinkedIn profile. And what it does is it makes room for those connections that now make sense for me. So if I'm on LinkedIn, my feed is now filled with those updated connections. You just become more clear when you start to eliminate things that are no longer supporting your brand. Wardrobe. So you're going to be transitioning from a little bit more casual, right, in college to a workplace. And I know the panel talked about, one of the panelists talked about the fact that she received feedback from someone about her wardrobe coming into work. You want to make sure that you are projecting a credible and professional image. Now, most organizations now are very casual, right? But you don't want to be too casual. You don't want to be walking in there in sweatpants or anything. And you have to take stock in, what do I want to achieve in the next couple of years? Does this wardrobe support that? Does it enforce and support my personal brand? If it doesn't, get rid of it. And content that no longer speaks to where you want to go in the next few years, okay? Okay, and the last one is elevate. So once you get through all the introspective work, all of that stuff, you're gonna move into what I think is the fun part, which is really elevating and showcasing your personal brand, right? And one of the most important parts of your personal brand identity is going to be your network. So this is a great opportunity for you to start building and tapping into that network. So there are two types of networks. There is an open network and a closed network. A closed network means that you have a single pocket of contacts. So for me, that would be, in my network, I only have personal brand strategists. That's it. No one else. But if I'm operating in an open network, I have different pockets of people. It could be my colleagues, it could be associations that I belong to, any hobbies or interests that I have, okay? The goal is for you to always be operating from an open network. Why? Because when you do, it increases diversity of thoughts and ideas, and it also increases the opportunity for you to be visible to a larger group of people. And these people could help take your brand outside of those that already know you, right? So networking is going to be really important in your career. And there's a scientist named Ron Burt who's, God bless you, who takes, he's had 25 years of studies on networking, open networks, closed networks. And his studies prove that when you operate in an open network, it is the best predictor of career success. So taking advantage of opportunities like this, getting contacts, but also making sure that you continue to nurture those along the way. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So when you look at your goals, a way that you can start building your network, when you look at your professional goals, look at who's in your network right now that could help you achieve those goals. Then you can do a gap analysis to see who's not in there that needs to be in there to help you achieve your goals. So you're constantly adding members, right? So once you gain that clarity from your personal brand, you can start to add connections that make sense. And then lastly, you want to always nurture that network. So I have clients who have been working, say, in an organization for a few years. They either want to pivot to another department or they want to pivot outside the organization. And then they say, oh, yeah, I need to go back to my network. Well, it's been 3 years, right? So you could do it, of course, but you don't want to go back and ask them for a favor after not connecting with them after 3 years. So carve out time. I am very intentional about how I network. I always go through my LinkedIn connections, and I will just say, hey, thinking about you, how's everything going? Whatever the connection is, I'll always send a note, and I will carve out 10 to 15 minutes a day in my morning to do that. I'll send an article. There might be an article that I thought some of my contacts would be interested in, so I'll send it to them. So building those relationships, that emotional connection, is going to be really important in your career journey. Okay, so let's talk about, I know I'm a little short on time here, so, okay, let's talk about some brand building tools, those tools that are going to help to really elevate your brand visually. TalkWalker is an alternative to Google Alerts. How many use Google Alerts in here? Okay. All right, good. So Google Alerts is a good strategy or a good tool for you to use. If you are wanting to get a job in whatever companies, set up a Google Alert for those companies and maybe people that are within that organization that you think are important or decision makers. Put their names in Google Alerts, because this will help you to stay abreast of any information about that organization. And there are great talking points in there when you finally get in there for that interview. Also, you might have an interview, and that day that the interview is taking place, there's breaking news in the company. Maybe they launch something. You get that alert. That is a great way for you to create a dialogue with that employer. So TalkWalker is just an alternative to Google Alerts. Another one is Mention. So this is where you can put your name in and see what comes up. Just another tool. There's a free and paid version. The free is fine. Delete Me. Has anyone ever heard of Delete Me? Okay, it's a really interesting tool. This is where if any public records that are out there that you do not want public, you can subscribe to this service. It's probably about $150 a year. And they scrub the net and they remove public records. And it's an ongoing process because what they do is they'll reach out to all of these places, and it might take a few months for that place to remove the piece of data. So it's an ongoing process. So I came across this tool when I had a client who was re-entering the workforce, and she was a little older, and she didn't want to be discriminated against for her age. So she wanted those public records removed. Canva. How many use Canva? It's amazing, right? Such a great tool. So what I love about Canva is, I'm more creative. What I love about it is that it's a great way to create consistency for your personal brand across social media platforms, right? So you can create posts in there. You guys know, you've been using it. But what I find interesting are the two new products or features that they offer. The text to images. Has anyone used this yet? So it's an AI functionality where you can, if you are creating original content and you are trying to look for images, but you have to pay for them or whatever, you can type in what image you're looking for, and it creates an image for you. So you do not have to worry about any royalty type pricing or copyright issues. So it's a really great tool. Also, it's customized for you, whatever image it is that you're requesting it to create, right? So it becomes more personal, part of your personal brand. And the other one is Magic Writer. Has anyone used this? It's great, right? It's like a writing assistant. It's fantastic. So if you feel that you're lacking branded content in your field, you can leverage this tool to begin to help create content. How many use Chat GPT? Okay, awesome. All right. A lot of controversy surrounding this. I love it. I think it's fantastic. So I think it's a great way for you to create content that is specific to you. I just caution that you make sure the content is authentic to you. Okay? So I use it for prompts if I need to create a blog or something, and it gives me, so I leverage it for that. Okay? But this is a great way to give you some content ideas as you're building your portfolio. Grammarly, who's using Grammarly? All right, awesome. Okay. How many are using the paid version? Okay, awesome. So what I love about the paid version is that if you are using an AI tool like GPT, you can, and you're writing your article, you throw it into the plagiarism feature on Grammarly to make sure that these ideas are authentic to you, right? You don't want to lose credibility if you're writing something and the employer is like, this isn't you. If you show up differently, then there's a disconnect in the brand. Video, how many people have created a video on their value proposition? Okay, so you can create, video is becoming increasingly popular amongst hiring managers. They love this tool because they can get a full view of you. So you want it to be a minute or under, and it's just a great way for you to give a little bit about yourself and what value you're going to bring to the organization. So by the end of this year, 80% of internet traffic will be video. So it's really popular. And it's a great way to showcase your brands. Communication skill is continues to be the number one skill that hiring managers look for, and also for new hires, and also for those that they want to elevate to that next level, okay? There's 4 methods of communication. We have verbal, nonverbal, so body language, facial gesture, hand gestures, facial expressions. And then there's phone and written. So nonverbal cues are the most important because they create most of our communication, believe it or not, okay? So think about things when you are on a video interview, how you're coming across, right? Do you seem engaged, right? Video is hard, I understand. I did video presentations during all of COVID. It's very hard to create that emotional connection when you're on video. But there are really a lot of ways to do it. You can make sure you're smiling, make sure you're looking right in the camera of your video screen. Look around what is going on in the back of your video screen, right? If you have 7 seconds or less to make an impression and you pop up on that video with a hiring manager, you want to project a very positive and professional image. So when I was doing a lot of presentations years ago, and then I looked back at the footage of my presentations, because I'm Italian, I used my hands a ton, and it was very distracting. So just keep that in mind, hand gestures. Okay, so elevate your brand inside and out of the office. The previous panel, we talked about, again, wardrobe. So when I talk about elevating your brand inside and out of the office, say you're working in a hybrid model, right? You get a job and you're working 2 days or 3 days in, and the rest you're working from home. You want to project a transparent brand. So how you show up on video should be similar to how you show up in the office, okay? Also, make sure you're taking advantage of those days that you are in the office. If you are if you're working a hybrid model, make sure you are networking during those days or setting up time, okay? If you are fully remote, then you have to be extra intentional about how you network. But it's important. So on LinkedIn, here's a couple of prime real estate things that you can take advantage of to elevate your brand. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I have so many students that I still keep in touch with. So you can connect with me here on LinkedIn. But a couple of things. You can leverage LinkedIn's banner colors. They have tons and tons of colors. So, or go into Canva and create one in Canva, right? But create something that speaks to you, that you think supports and reinforces your personal brand. Maybe it's a color that you love. Make sure there's a call to action that's easily visible. So if you want to connect with someone, or if you have, say you created in a website where you house all of your branded content, your portfolio, and you want to direct people there, put it on the top so people can see it. Contact information, email, make it visible. Headshot. You don't need to spend a ton of money on hiring a photographer, although I think it's a great idea, but have one of your trusted friends take a picture, professional picture with their phone. Phones are beautiful. They have beautiful cameras on them now. Just make sure it's professional looking. And then the 30-second profile story. Has anyone used this yet? No? It's a great place to showcase your brand in a way that's authentic to you. So we can use this feature to say, you know, your name, what are your differentiating qualities and strengths and values, right? What can you offer to that employer? So you can check out mine if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn to get some ideas, but it's a great thing to do to help elevate your brand. And then the pronunciation feature, if you have a last name that is difficult to pronounce, then leverage that pronunciation key. It's like, I think, 10 seconds. So you might want to say, like, my last name is Piros, and no one seems to get that right. But it's a great way for you to make sure somebody gets your name right. And then you can leverage brand colors, whatever those colors are for you, okay? Could be your favorite colors. Keywords, weave in some of those keywords that are relevant to the industry that you're interviewing in or want to be part of. Weave them in throughout. And one thing I want to note here, underneath my name is a headline where lots of people just include their title, which is wonderful. But that's what you do, right? So for me, I want to tell people how I can help you, right? So put some things in there, give it some thought as to how you can use that space to communicate your value proposition to an employer. Okay, my top 2 don'ts, and I know we're running out of time. Okay, fear. Do not let fear hinder your ability to move forward, okay? It's normal to get no's. I remember in the early days in my career, I got a no for a few companies and I was devastated, right? But now looking back, they weren't right for me. So don't fear no. Don't fear rejection. It just means that your yes is going to be that much more rewarding. And it most likely will be aligned with who you are and what you want to accomplish. So just don't sit in it for a moment. If you get a rejection, you interviewed at a company, and you think you did really well, and you probably did really well, don't get stuck in that. Don't get paralyzed. Just move on. It wasn't meant to be. And the other one is fine. Nothing exciting comes from the word fine, right? How was dinner last night? Fine. How did the interview go? Fine. My husband knows that when I say that a number of times, things are not fine, right? So try and be excited about your prospects, okay? And if you think they're fine, they're probably not for you. You want to be excited, right? You want to be excited about what you do. So don't fear and don't settle for fine, okay? One last thing, and then I need to get off the stage for the next session. If you want to uncover your brand and go through the exercise that we talked about earlier with your VPs, download this booklet and go through it. Don't try and do it all at one time. Just sit with it, write your answers in it. And if you are struggling through it at all, my email address is right here. Shoot me an email and say, hey, I'm having some problems with this. Can you clarify X, Y, and Z? Okay? Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to be a resource for you. Lots of luck. It was wonderful being here. Again, if you have any questions, I don't think we have time for questions, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to email me a question, okay? Good luck to you all. Thank you.